project in the library is comprised of a sampling of what I was looking for was to try to sort of, to sum this up, to tear books apart and to sort of introduce some of that energy, that life energy that's contained within books, and looking at things like manuscripts, scrolls, various historical documents, things that really sort of the widest form of expression that's contained in our civilization, for that fact, or globally, looking at global cultures, and trying to sort of celebrate that in terms of this space. I mean, architecturally looking at
The great thing about a letter is you combine them, you get the written word or spoken word. It's like kind of a triple-fold meaning. You have the letters as shape. When you do the art, you're actually playing with the physical shape of the letter, the construction of the letter, the blueprints, if you will. But then you can take these letters, put it together, and you got a word. So you can with the word, you have meaning attached to the word, and then you put a group of words together, and you have a sentence, paragraph, and there's meaning attached to that. So it's kind of like a triple-step thing. When this stuff started, it was like, I think all of us were a whole lot younger when we started, 14 or something like that. So you have an art form that was created by children, which I think is pretty amazing too. Where else can you say that, like, you had an art movement created by kids, using the environment for alternative uses rather than what it was created for. I think a lot of people coming up now are starting to feel alienated by their environment, their government, and it's like, where's the little guy have a say?
I don't really care, truthfully, if they can read it. It's not, I'm not writing a poem on the wall. I wasn't writing something that had, a word that had any particular, acronym or real meaning behind it, other than a moniker that I gave.
It's not meant to anger anybody, unless somebody has their own personal vendetta or something. But I don't really see that happening. It's more just a way of taking your art form, whatever you're feeling at the moment, and shoving it into the public eye, without them having a choice about it or not. And what they take from it, they do this for 15 years, a couple of years ago, where I stopped really caring if anybody saw it or not, and where I just became doing it strictly for myself, where I wouldn't mind taking that walk deep out into the woods and just spending some time with myself just for the pure enjoyment of painting it.
You mentioned working outside the box and this sort of desire to sort of express yourself in a public space or public forum that has no institutional mediation. Right. The question I have that comes up in my mind when I look at this work is that it seems fairly institutional in a certain way. There's a sort of iconography that a tradition that you're working in, that kind of sort of what I see as a fairly narrowly defined definition of what that tradition is. And I think of all the artists that I know, myself included, who have done work in public spaces, which is unsanctioned. It seems like there's boundaries to be stretched here, right, if you're going to do that work. And one of the boundaries is, I would say, and what I see, just looking back on having done pieces that I always did were always temporary. They were ephemeral. They were intended to make a statement, and a statement that I was hoping would reach people on a number of levels. And what I hear you saying is a little different. I hear you kind of, there seems to be sort of a, you don't care if anybody understands what you say. You don't care if, it's almost, there's almost a sort of a scatological sense to the way you're presenting it. And maybe I'm misunderstanding you.
We care more for other writers, other people that do it.
Saying hello to your friends.
Right. It's if it is there's definitely a sense of it that's like, if you don't get it, oh well, that's you're not involved in my world or how I think, and that's all right. You go do your thing. I know plenty of people out there, they're doing their thing that I don't understand, and that's just fine. I'm just like, okay, you're doing your thing. It's in some ways it's kind of like playing a game. Like, the game board is the city streets or the train lines or whatever.
It's very similar to what you do with working with your environment with your sculptures. You get this particular environment at this elementary school or this park or whatnot, and you come up, you create the idea of how you want to express yourself in that, and that's your outside surrounding. And for us, we just get to use whatever space we choose, as such as the side of a freight train, which is a lot more fun than most things I've experienced in life.
Where I see,
And
where I see a little divergence, though, is that I'm hoping that my work does more than say hi to my buddies, which would be a very limited group.
Right.
That it actually has resonance that will try to communicate with a much broader audience.
Right. No.
And that it will have levels and layers to it that are inviting, and may also some other layers that may not be as inviting, but they are, as you said, codes that can be decided.
Yes, there is parts that are ego involved and just like talking amongst friends, but there are also parts that you do realize that you're addressing a wider audience, and I've always thought that was great when someone has come up to me after the fact and was like, "Oh, I saw the thing you painted here. I thought that was fantastic. It was, I liked the character you did, or I liked the quote you wrote or something." So, I mean, some of it is very egocentric, but there's also parts of it that, I do hope that people see it and connect with it, and it's worked with me where I've taken doing the graffiti, and I'm a painter now, and I do a lot of canvases, and that's a lot of what I do with the graffiti has been brought into the canvases, and using that as a forum to address bigger issues or
Think
say
about, historically, environmentally, what does this place mean? Do you really think a lot about that? Does that go into the work?
Yes. You know what? Yes, because when I go down in the tunnel, I live in New York City. When I'm in the tunnels in New York City, climbing around doing my thing, I think that's really great because I find stuff that it's deep down in those tunnels, and the only other people going down there, are either the motormen and repairmen for the train or the other riders. And I found stuff down there labeled 78, 74, and those people know that that's going to be there and it's going to stay there until they either destroy the tunnel or someone crashes another plane into New York or something.
There's a complex system down there that no one will ever see because it just never got developed. There's, about ghost stations.
Right.
There's whole train stations underground that just never got given an access to the street. That, basically, the MTA workers, graffiti writers, and subway bums are the only people that find it out.
And when you do the graffiti down there, it's part of the environment or becomes part of the environment, and there's kind of an interaction with you and that environment, and that environment with you. It's when you go down there, it's like when you're creeping through a tunnel and you pop up to one of these abandoned stations and it's just all colors around and people have gone down there and done their thing. It's like kind of like an amazing adventure a little bit. You're like
You have this image of surrounded by darkness, space that's just filled with
Right.
color like that.
you're in this dark, grimy, dirty, sometimes loud when the train comes by, and then boom, you pop up into some place and it's like a little garden of vandalism.